Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one and welcome back once again to Mingles with Jingles, and in this episode we are once again sponsored by NordPass, the password manager that I just cannot live without, and this time, until the end of May, you can now get 70% off a 2-year NordPass premium plan with an additional 1 month for free. As always, completely risk-free with their 30-day money-back guarantee. Just go to nordpass.com/jingles and use code JINGLES to get this deal and keep your passwords safe and organised. This time around, I wanted to highlight the benefit of the data breach scanner that comes with NordPass, because it's not just a password manager. You don't have to sit around waiting for companies that have been breached to admit that they've been breached in order to find out whether or not your data is at risk. Like the Crypto.com breach that occurred in January of this year, where hackers made off with about $18 million worth of Bitcoins and $15 million worth of Ethereum. They even managed to get past the two-factor authentication on Crypto.com, and Crypto.com initially reported it as an incident, not a hack, and denied that any currency had been stolen. And it's in situations like this where you can't really afford to sit around waiting for the company that has been breached to come clean about it. And with NordPass's data breach scanner, you don't have to, because it trolls the various different websites where data is traded, and at the first mention of anything involving you, it notifies you via the app. In fact, in the month since I moved home and changed all of my online details, including my email address, I've received no notifications at all from any of the companies or websites that hold any of my personal information. And yet in that same period of time, NordPass's data breach scanner has registered at least 20 different occasions when my personal information has been traded on the dark web. I mean, I don't really care because it's old information that's no longer useful to anybody. And my new personal details have not yet appeared on NordPass's data breach scanner, so it's all good. But it just goes to highlight the importance of not actually trusting the websites and companies that you have entrusted your personal information to. So, until the end of this month, 70% off a 2-year NordPass premium plan. Try it for 30 days, completely risk-free. If you don't like it, you get your money back. Just head over to nordpass.com/jingles and use code JINGLES. So, yeah, another week. It's been quite a good week, actually. Oh, by the way, the game running in the background, because some of you always ask, is Aliens Fireteam Elite. I'm sure anybody who's into Aliens has already heard about it and it needs no introduction. It's a game that it's unusual in that I would struggle to recommend it, even though I think it is an excellent game, mostly because of the longevity issues. It comes with 4 campaigns, each with 3 missions, so 12 missions in total, and they are all very, very good. The game itself is priced very competitively, and the developers continue to support it regularly. And yet the problem that I have, and I think if I'm being honest, most people probably have with this game, is those updates. Because when you have a game of this nature, pushing out regular updates, and it does need regular updates, is difficult. Because the 12 campaign maps that are available, while they are exquisitely well paced, designed and detailed, a colossal amount of effort goes into developing each and every one of these maps. So once you've played through the campaign a couple of times in order to level up all of the various different marine character classes available, you're kind of sick to death of the same 12 maps over and over. Well, that's all right. You just push out an update with new maps. Well, it's not that simple, because it takes a colossal amount of effort, time and money to design a new one of these maps. And the new campaign is 3 of these new maps. And it's just not practical, because it's only going to be enough to hold somebody's interest the first maybe 2 or 3 times they play through them. And then you're right back to square one. So in order to keep updating the game, they have to try to take a different approach, which they have been doing by introducing new weapons. They've introduced 2 new marine playable classes. The problem, of course, is that in order to level up those marine playable classes, it's straight back to the same 12 original maps over and over and over again. So pretty much right back to square one again. And you can try to step things up a little by increasing the difficulty levels, and the higher difficulty levels are absolutely ridiculously hard. And doing that will extend the playability a bit. At least you run into the frustration wall because it's too hard and you just can't progress. But you can see the kind of problem that you have with trying to push out regular updates for a game of this nature. It's not that the developers aren't trying, They are. It's just that the kind of new content that people want, new campaigns, new maps, is prohibitively expensive and time consuming to introduce, and it only solves the problem for a very limited period of time until people get just as bored with the brand new maps as they are with the existing ones. So, yeah, I mean, I think this game is amazing. I love it. And I admit I am probably more than a little biased because it is Aliens and I absolutely love Aliens. And if, like me, you're an Aliens fan, I would happily recommend Aliens Fireteam Elite as a game that you will get so much enjoyment out of for about a month. And then once you've leveled up all of your classes and your weapons, because you can level up the weapons as well, once you've done that, there really isn't an awful lot to play. Certainly nothing that you haven't already seen before. And that's why I would struggle to recommend this to a general audience, which is a shame because it is a very, very good game. Speaking of very, very good games that have had a bit of a, how can we put this, a bit of a rocky start, those of you who saw Saturday's video will no doubt be aware that I am currently enjoying Warhammer 40,000 Chaos Gate Demonhunters. Oh, and by the way, for the 3 or 4 of you who were anxious that I was going to abandon the Far Cry 6 playthrough in order to concentrate on Chaos Gate Demonhunters, don't worry, I will finish Far Cry 6. There's maybe 2, possibly 3 more Far Cry 6 videos before I come to the end of that game. But I will be kind of mixing it up with some Chaos Gate Demonhunters in between the remaining Far Cry 6 videos, and then I'll be basically taken over from Far Cry 6 with Chaos Gate. Actually, now that I come to think of it, that brings up another point, and this is something that occasionally keeps popping up in other videos, but when I mentioned that I was going to start playing Chaos Gate in the video that I did on Saturday, I did get people saying, oh, does this mean you're going to abandon Far Cry 6? Like you did with Ghost Recon Wildlands. I finished Ghost Recon Wildlands. I finished it twice. I did one complete playthrough and then another one in order to get a different ending. And I got that with Lone Echo as well. People saying, when are you going to finish the Lone Echo playthrough? About 2 years ago. It's just, what is going on? Is this just YouTube being YouTube and not recommending or notifying people that these videos are out? I mean, we're going back a couple of years now. And yet I still get people saying, Jingles, when are you going to finish Ghost Recon Wildlands? I don't know. Anyway, getting sidetracked. Moving on. I will finish Far Cry 6. Like I said, 2, possibly 3 more videos to go. And then we will be picking up the slack with Chaos Gate Demonhunters, which has had a bit of a rocky start for a couple of reasons. I can't talk about performance issues. People have been complaining about performance issues with the game. We're in a kind of Cyberpunk 2077 situation here because I had no issues with performance in that game either. I'm not saying there weren't performance issues, obviously there were, but I couldn't comment on them because I never experienced them. And it's the same for me with Chaos Gate Demonhunters. It's been running flawlessly on my machine. Another issue with the game that I absolutely can and am going to comment on is to do with the way Frontier Foundry have been publicising the game. So, Chaos Gate Demonhunters was developed by Complex Games, and it's published by Frontier Foundry. And you've probably heard of Frontier. They're the people that publish, amongst others. In fact, they also develop Elite. And they publish Planet Zoo, Jurassic World Evolution, and now Warhammer 40k, Chaos Gate Demonhunters. I really am going to have to come up with some kind of abbreviation for the title of that game because it's way too unwieldy. But anyway. And one of the things that they were doing, and this was obviously done to help publicise and raise awareness of the game, was put a lot of content into Twitch drops. The day before the game was published, on the 5th of May, people were allowed to start streaming it and publishing videos on it. And a fair amount of content was locked behind these Twitch drops, which meant that if you wanted content for the game that you'd just paid money for, you had to watch people streaming it on Twitch. Somewhat understandably, this pissed a lot of people off. Now, personally, I haven't actually watched anybody streaming the game on Twitch. I don't even know what the Twitch DLC drops were. I certainly haven't missed any of it. I've been playing the game just fine without it, but I can kind of understand that if you've just paid a reasonable amount of money for a brand new game, you don't want the content that you paid for to be locked behind Twitch drops. The publisher didn't see it this way, of course. They saw the Twitch DLC as extra content above and beyond what anybody might have paid for. But after a couple of days of outrage on the forums, they have bowed to pressure, and they've announced that all of the stuff that was available as a Twitch drop will be made available as DLC for the regular game at some point this month. Second issue, also to do with DLC, and this one a little bit more contentious. So the game released with some day one DLC. The base price of the game was $34.99, or you could pay $44.99 to get the Castellan Champion edition of the game, or if you'd bought the base copy of the game, you could buy the Castellan Champion edition as a sort of DLC upgrade for I think $12.99, which is more than a third of the base price of the game. So what do you get with this DLC? Well, Warhammer 40k nerds will probably have heard of Castellan Crow, famous Grey Knight Space Marine. And this is what you get, or this is who you get, with the Castellan Champion upgrade. And he is absurdly overpowered. He's a level 20 character with a demonic power sword and Terminator armor. I mean, he just kicks so much arse, it's not even funny. And my issue with this isn't so much that they're charging more than a third of the base price, and this is the publisher, by the way, not the developer. More on that in a moment. It's not so much that they're charging more than a third of the price of the base cost of the game for this DLC. I mean, they can charge whatever the hell they want. We're all grown adults. We can make our own purchasing decisions. You don't have to get the DLC, but it is such absurdly overpowered DLC that I dare say people are going to be tempted to get it just for that reason. You know, above and beyond the lore nerd geek out factor of having Castellan Crow in your Space Marine squad. And because he is so stupidly overpowered, I think that people are going to come to regret the decision. Not just because it kind of removes any kind of challenge, but also your Marines earn experience and level up based on doing damage and getting kills. And nobody's going to be doing any damage or getting any kills if you've got Castellan Crow in your squad, because he's going to be killing everything. So you're going to have this one absurdly powerful character just ruffle stomping everything, while the rest of your Marines just kind of stand around getting bored and never leveling up. And in games of this nature, that's at least half of the enjoyment. It's at least half of the reason why we play them, in order to level up our Marines, get better weapons, increase their abilities, make them tougher. It's most of the reason why I play that kind of game. In fact, I'm reminded of what happened. Does anybody remember Armored Warfare? You know, back when it was looking like it might actually be a really good different alternative to World of Tanks, back when Obsidian Entertainment were developing it before they got sacked by the publisher My.com, and they took over in-house development and basically just turned it into a World of Tanks clone because that's where the money was. Yeah. For me, the big draw with Armored Warfare, I mean, above and beyond the whole fighting tank battles, because, you know, that was obviously fun, but it was also unlocking new tanks, progressing up the tech trees. That's the major reason why I play that kind of game. Well, one day, because I had a very good relationship with Obsidian Entertainment, who at the time, before they got sacked, were the developers, and I asked them if they could credit my account with some cash so I could, you know, unlock the tanks that I'd already researched, which they did. But they also credited my account with a metric arse ton of free experience. And I didn't have the self-discipline to not use it. The next day, I logged in, I saw, as well as all of the credits, a shit ton of free experience, and it was like Christmas morning. I started unlocking and fully upgrading every tank in the game. And then I thought, now what? And I pretty much stopped playing Armored Warfare there and then. I just eliminated half of the reason why I bothered playing the game in the first place. And then, of course, the developers sacked Obsidian... Well, not the developers, sorry, the publisher, My.com, sacked Obsidian Entertainment and removed the other half of the reason why I bothered playing the game. And it's kind of like that with Castellan Crow in Chaos Gate Demonhunters. Because, you know, what's the point? If you've got him in your squad, you don't need the other Marines. And if you have him in your squad, the rest of your Marines are never going to get any better because he's killing everything for them. So, yeah. But then again, you know, unlike with Armoured Warfare, the problem of having Castellan Crow in your squad is something that you can easily avoid. Just don't buy him. It's, you know. Or if you have already paid for the Castellan Champion edition of the game, hopefully you've got a bit more self-discipline than I had with Armoured Warfare, and you won't use him. But then again, why did you bother paying for him if you're not going to use him? So yeah, that is an issue. Another issue, and one which I think is absolutely ridiculous, but which people have been complaining about, is that the Marines in Chaos Gate aren't as tough as they're supposed to be. Hang on, bear with me here. So you've got your Marines teleporting into battle and then cutting a bloody swathe through hordes of Chaos cultists and poxwalkers, and at the end of it, some of your Marines are injured and have to undergo medical treatment, and people are complaining, Marines should be tougher than this. Oh, this is completely unrealistic. Well, leaving aside the whole fact that there has to be some form of game balance here, there has to be some kind of challenge, even in the earlier missions, and obviously your Marines are going to toughen up as you unlock upgrades and new abilities and better armor and better weapons. And obviously the opponents are also going to toughen up. Eventually you're going to be fighting Chaos Marines, who are just as hard as you. But leaving aside that whole argument, the idea that Marines aren't allowed to take damage, which is basically what people are complaining about here. They're saying, well, I'm fighting Chaos Cultists. They only have auto guns and las guns. I should be able to cut through trash like that like a hot knife through butter. You do cut through trash like that like a hot knife through butter. You teleport into battle with 4 Marines, you face hordes of cultists, and at the end of the mission, unless you're supremely crap, they're all dead, and all 4 of your Marines are still standing. Bloodied, battered, but unbeaten. Yes, some of them may be injured, but I fear that people are missing the point here. They're injured, but they can still fight. Because they're Marines. They're basically supermen. They may require medical treatment, but that doesn't mean you can't put injured Marines back into battle. And when you do put injured Marines back into battle, it's not like XCOM 2, where your troops suffer all kinds of negative status effects because you've put injured troops back into battle. The only penalty in Chaos Gate is that your Marines have slightly less hit points than fully combat capable Marines. They still kick just as much arse. And the whole idea that your Marines shouldn't be taking damage from Chaos Cultists armed with autoguns and las guns is just ridiculous in the first place. People saying that, well, the Marines in the tabletop game are way tougher than this. No, they're not. They're really not. Are you seriously telling me that every time you field a chapter of Space Wolves or Ultramarines or whatever against, for example, an Imperial Guard army, that none of your Marines take any damage or die just because the opponents are only armed with las guns? Of course they do. And in the tabletop game, dead Marines who've been shot up by massed volleys of las gun fire stay dead. In Chaos Gate, they just drop to one knee for 3 turns and then they get up again. And they don't even have to stay down for 3 turns if you can get an apothecary to them and heal them up. They're straight back into the fight. They're not invincible. Tabletop Marines take wounds and die from enemies armed with autoguns and las guns. But in Chaos Gate, your Marines, they take wounds and injuries that would incapacitate or outright kill multiple times over normal human beings, but they just shrug it off, suck it up, and continue fighting. Because they're Marines. They're actually tougher than the tabletop version. So the whole argument that the Marines in Chaos Gate are just not as tough as they should be is an argument that I find completely ridiculous. But it is one of the criticisms that people have been levelling at the game. I mean, I don't think it's a fair criticism at all, for all the reasons that I've just elaborated. I think it's an absolutely laughable criticism. But it is a criticism that people have been making. On the whole, I think it's a very, very good game. I haven't been experiencing any of the performance issues that other people have been complaining about, and certainly if you're experiencing performance issues, that is a valid criticism. But your Marines not being as tough as you'd like. Suck it up, Buttercup. Put those injured Marines back into battle. They don't care, and neither should you. So, yeah, Warhammer 40k, Chaos Gate, Demonhunters. This will be replacing Far Cry 6 in my video playthroughs. But I will be finishing Far Cry 6 before Warhammer 40k completely takes over. I have very much been enjoying that game. I think it's a genuinely great Warhammer 40k game. And there aren't that many genuinely great Warhammer 40k games out there. I mean, there are some okay ones. I'm also looking forward to Space Marine 2, but, you know, there's all kinds of things that can go wrong with that before it gets released. Oh, and then, of course, you've got Warhammer 40,000 Darktide, I think, which is basically Vermintide, the Warhammer fantasy game, except, you know, Warhammer 40k. And I'm probably looking forward to that most because you're not Space Marines in that game. I mean, Space Marines are great and all that, but I've always had a soft spot for the Imperial Guard. Because they're not Space Marines. They're not Supermen armed with the best weapons and armour. They're just regular Joes and Janes armed with flashlights. They're usually outnumbered. They're almost always outgunned. Told to go and stand and fight against the most horrific shit the universe has to offer. And they do. And that's what I love about them. Life is just so incredibly brutally cheap in the Warhammer 40k universe. And that's the thing I love the most about it. You know, you often get these arguments online. Who would win, Star Wars versus Star Trek? The Galactic Empire versus the Federation? Answer, the Galactic Empire. It wouldn't even be close. No, really. Somebody once calculated, what was his name? A guy called Curtis Saxton did this website called the Star Wars Technical Commentaries, and he's an astrophysicist who I believe worked for NASA, but whatever. He basically examined the science. And he calculated, based on a single scene from The Empire Strikes Back, when the Millennium Falcon is being pursued through an asteroid belt by a bunch of Star Destroyers. And there's this one scene where a Star Destroyer, a single turbo laser from a Star Destroyer, shoots out and vaporizes an asteroid. And from that, he was able to calculate, using science, that the Galactic Empire would roll over the Federation without even pausing for breath. How did he do that? Well, obviously there was all kinds of science in there, but he was able to, by looking at the albedo of the asteroid, calculate that it was a nickel-iron asteroid. And then he was able to get a reasonably accurate estimate of the size and mass of that asteroid, and from that he was able to calculate the minimum level of power necessary to completely vaporize it. And from that he was able to calculate that a single shot from a Star Destroyer turbo laser, and remember, Star Destroyers have a lot of turbo lasers, a single shot from a Star Destroyer turbo laser would completely overwhelm the shields on a Galaxy-class cruiser and knock the ship out in one go. And at the height of its power, the Star Wars Galactic Empire had something like 20,000 Star Destroyers. That's just the Star Destroyers, you know, never mind the frigates and the starfighters and everything else. And a single one of these Star Destroyers would be able to comfortably dispose of an entire fleet of Federation cruisers, destroyers, and attack ships. And, you know, it doesn't end there. Who would win? The Halo universe versus the Mass Effect universe. Who would win? The Starship Troopers universe versus the Colonial Marines from Aliens. But the one thing that everybody seems to agree on is that the Warhammer 40k universe would wipe the floor with all of them. It wouldn't even be close, even against the Galactic Empire. Just forget it. Occasionally you get some die-hard Star Wars fans who say, well, what about the Force? What about Darth Vader? What about the Emperor? Well, oh, so you've got two psychers, have you? That's cute. The Grey Knights chapter of Space Marines alone has 1,000 Force users, which is probably more than the Jedi at the height of their powers. So, you know, just good luck with that. And there are 1,000 different chapters of Space Marines, millions of Imperial Guard regiments, And that's just the Imperium of Man. I mean, the Eldar, the Dark Eldar, the Forces of Chaos, Orcs, the Tau. God help you if the Tyranids ever get involved. Just forget it. Nothing else would have a prayer against the Warhammer 40k universe. I mean, it's just the sheer crushing, unrelenting brutality of it. And even if, whoever you were, you could put up some kind of resistance, and you wouldn't, but even if you could, I guarantee your will to live would break long before anybody in the Warhammer 40k universe. I mean, even the Imperial Guard, you know, the weakest that the Imperium of Man has to offer, will not quit. Remember Cadia? The planet broke before the Guard did. So, yeah, every time you see one of these arguments sprout up online, which universe would win in a fight, everybody always just takes for granted that we're not talking about Warhammer 40k here. Because it's no contest. As long as Warhammer 40k exists, everybody's only really arguing about who would place second. And that's why I love it. Anyway, that about covers it for this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you're all looking forward to that Chaos Gate playthrough. And I hope some of you at least are going to get some use out of that NordPass app. But that is it for today. So, as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.